Welcome back to Denver Gridiron and Hoops, where all the good takes just keep flowing, baby. That being said, I got with me the co-host, Vincent McDougal, and another guest today. We have Ben Breckline. Just so happens to be our nephew. We're keeping it in the family, baby. But that being said, he is a basketball analyst, football analyst, and above all else, he's unfortunately a Bronco and Nugget hater. Benjamin Breckline, please introduce yourself.
What's up, guys? My name's Ben. I'm a Jazz fan because I'm from Utah, and I'm a Seahawks fan because they beat the Broncos in the Super Bowl and won me $20, but that's unrelated. I just need to say that I am here to keep these Nuggets fans in check and to keep the Broncos fans in check, because I hear the takes online, and y'all are crazy. There's no way these teams are as good as you think they are.
Coming in with the heat already. So tell me, Vinny, since our last podcast, you got anything you need to get off your chest here in the front end?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just smashed a barbecue bacon cheeseburger. And my only regret is that we just had light ranch in the fridge.
Oh, why do you even have it in the fridge?
I know. I mean, I'm trying to think of the ranking of ranch. So obviously, like restaurant ranch, you can't touch it.
Dude, Wingstop ranch is top notch.
Yeah, and then
Chick-fil-A ranch is up there too.
Chick-fil-A ranch, okay, and then we got Kraft. Then we get into light ranch, fat-free ranch. I mean, you got to do what you got to do when you're in a pickle, but quite disappointing. Still, nonetheless, barbecue bacon cheeseburger did not disappoint. It could have been better. Could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I would have let the barbecue highlight it and just probably trashed the ranch is probably the direction I would have headed. Yeah,
I mean, really, the light ranch, it reminds me of David Adelman's face. It's just there. It disappoints you, but you just kind of have to deal with it. It just is what it is. You need a condiment of some sort to accompany the barbecue, at least if you're me. I mean, some people, straight barbecue, that's okay, but not me. So outside of that, just ready to talk some sports, ready to talk, some haterade from my nephew and break down all things sports.
Perfect. So once again, we are Denver Gridiron and Hoops, where we once watched Tebow play 3 quarters of terrible football just to turn into Jesus in the fourth. And where here in Peyton, yell Omaha meant we were bound to score. And yes, this is the same city Carmelo left to go to the bright lights of New York. But he came crawling back when he wanted his jersey retired. Speaking of jersey retirement, what are the thoughts on the CU Buffs forcefully retiring the jersey number of a 5th-round pick in Shedeur Sanders?
You know what? I actually think that it's worthwhile to retire his jersey. Even though he slipped to the 5th, which I think we can all agree is way too low. He should have been drafted higher. I wanted the Seahawks to take him, but we got Jaden Milroe, so I'll take it. The only reason the Buffs are relevant in national media is because of Shedeur Sanders, Coach Prime, and my boy Travis Hunter. If it weren't for those 3, I wouldn't have watched a single CU Buffs game ever. So I think the national recognition that he brought them and just his overall play while he was at CU was worthy of a jersey retirement.
I'll interject there. I'm fine with maybe an eventual jersey retirement. But the summer after you finish playing I don't know. It just, it screams daddy did this for me. What are your thoughts, Vinny?
Hey, there is nothing wrong with a little bit of nepotism, okay?
How do you think I got here?
I mean, come on now. Yes, he's on the podcast solely because of bloodlines. But, obviously Travis Hunter's a no-doubter. The dude wins a Heisman and deserves that recognition to be enshrined in CU football history for the rest of his life. Shedeur, his story's yet to be written, in the professional arena. And I'm excited to see what he does. There's a lot of people that have tried to turn around that Browns franchise. And it would be really cool to see if he's the guy to do it. But if we're strictly just speaking about, college success, that type of notoriety is not just reserved for people who bring the program clout or bring the program, into the national spotlight. Great quarterback, set some records as a quarterback in just his 2 seasons there. But to to have his jersey retired, that was a little bit of a stretch for me. Even overtime. You might have to Google this while I'm talking, but there was a former, it might even have been a former Heisman, one of their running backs who helped them to a national championship, still to this day hasn't had his jersey retired. And if you're just talking about on-field performance and notoriety, I think he fell short. But I'm still glad Prime's there. And who knows, this might be a pattern, a trend that he's starting. That's the other piece that we need to, reserve judgment on, is maybe we see other programs who, retire numbers of people that maybe didn't bring a national championship or win a Heisman, but were just important to the program, just like Ben said earlier. So I'll give it some time to see, if this starts a new trend, but I don't think he did what it took to deserve that retirement.
And more than anything, it's the timing. Like, let's be real. They were just trying to keep Prime happy, which is understandable. Like, if I was CU, I would give him anything and everything that he wants, because without him, they return back to the dumpsters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the lowest of the lows before him and some pretty dang highs after him. So it's definitely understandable. And, like, speaking of, like, honoring someone, just recently, Demaryius Thomas finally got introduced to the Ring of Fame. So I just wanted to, pay homage to that. Do you have anything special you want to add to that, Vinny? I know my favorite thing was always just a bubble screen that should only go 7 yards, went 80. Always going to love that aspect of DT and just his strong will, and just more than anything, just what a great wide receiver we got to watch over the years with him.
Yeah, it was sad to see his story end the way it did, because you never know how these professional athletes, as time progresses, what they get involved in, how they impact the community. Who knows, get into broadcasting, other things like that. His story ended far too early. The thing I think about when I think DT is not just what he did on the field, but he was also everywhere in the community as well, and just kind of embraced Denver just as much as we embraced him as a player. So tragic ending, and it's sad to just think about. But good man, good player, and one of those people like him, Darrent Williams, some of those guys where you just will always remember as a Bronco fan.
Yeah, definitely. So to pivot from that, just wanted to start off and let Ben here get some airtime. What I wanted to ask you, Ben, is, despite you say you kind of grew up in Utah, but I mean, maybe when you were up until you were 3, the rest of the time you were here in Denver. So I just kind of describe what life has been like growing up as a hater all these years, living in the city where you're just the devil's advocate at every moment.
Honestly, it hasn't been too bad, because one thing I'll say about you Denver fans, y'all are some of the most fair weather fans I've ever seen. I hadn't heard anything about people liking the Nuggets, or for that matter, the Avalanche, until very recently. However, y'all do ride for your Broncos, whether they're good or bad. That is true. So really, as long as I avoided football talk, I was fine. I would talk about the Jazz, and then I'd hear people talk about like, I think Kenneth Faried is good, and that was about it.
That's rough. His career just went straight to the toilet really quickly after leaving the Nuggets. But that being said, a quick segment want to knock out here. Quick fire hate check. So we'll call it hate/love. So I'm gonna throw out rapid fire names, and I want Ben, you to react with a 1-word reaction, and then I want Vinny then to react with the 1-word reaction. Just see the polar opposites that happen right in this segment. So I'm going to start it off with, Ben, I'm addressing this to you. Nikola Jokic.
Insufficient.
Insufficient. All right. Vinny, go ahead.
That's a tough one. One word.
Yes, sir.
So what I'm struggling with is it and this is just my internal thought process here. Is it one word on how he compares to other position? I mean, to the center position all time. One word of how he compares to his peers current era. One word of what he means to the Denver Nuggets organization.
It's just like your one word. Like if I was to say, I'd just say artist, because the things the guy does is amazing.
No, that's a really good portrayal of him. And the reason why I set it up that way is because I just wanted Ben to hear how impactful Jokic is. That we can't just put him in one little box. We're talking he could be all time. How does he impact his current era? How does he impact the franchise? So many things that he could do. So I'll just say, and this is in reference to the franchise, savior.
Oh, that's pretty good. I like it. All right. So we're going to move on to John Elway. Ben.
First thing that came to mind was old. I'm too young to know anything about Elway.
That's all right. That's what you got. Vinny, where are you at?
Manslaughter.
Dude, that is too good. So yeah, that's in light of some news that happened a bit ago. All right, on to the next name, Sean Payton.
Overrated.
Okay. All right, Vinny, what about you?
Stubborn.
That's pretty solid. All right, here's a good one for you, Ben. Russell Westbrook.
Fallen off. That might be two, but...
That is two words. Let's stick with one. I'm surprised he didn't just go with old again.
Nah, because, I had watched Westbrook a little bit when I was younger, and he was really good then, and now he's...
antiquated. How
inconsistent.
About that? Inconsistent. I like it.
Good one.
All right, what about you, Vinny?
I'll go with elite.
Elite, nice. Jamal Murray.
Clutch.
Inconsistent.
Yep, that's where my mind was. But not like he's not clutch. All right, and then let's go Bo Nix.
Unproven.
That's a good one.
That is a good one. Yeah, you're gonna have to circle back to me on that one. That's a tough one.
No problem. Let's hit Peyton Manning.
GOAT.
Facts.
I mean, guys, Tom Brady's right there.
The fact that you say right there, like, it shows how good the man is.
I'll go with Sheriff.
Yeah, that's solid. I like it. All right, Vinny, do you still got that Bo Nix take?
I can't give you a one word. I don't know.
I'll jump in there. I'm going to call him a riser.
There you go.
So, all right, guys. Just figured we knocked that out real quick.
Can I do one real quick? Because this is the one I was waiting for.
Let's hear it.
MPJ, and I'll start out with overpaid. Or, it's two words. Hold on, let's see if I can find a way to say that in one word.
Put a hyphen
Thief.
in there. Thief. Yeah, unfortunately, the word choice that comes to mind is multiple words. Now I see why you guys were struggling so hard. I'm just gonna say unmotivated, because that's what it seems to be for me.
I'm gonna go with rich.
Right? That's some facts right there. All right, guys. Well, so let's go ahead and swing this over. I thought we'd address the Russell Wilson trade, because we've got here a lifelong Seahawks fan, unfortunately. And, that was a big moment between these two franchises that really set one really, really far down in the depths. And then the other franchise doesn't seem like they even took advantage of it. So I'm going to read off the details of the trade. We got the Broncos sent to the Seahawks 2 first-round picks, 2022 and 2023, 2 second-round picks, 2022 and 2023, a 5th-round pick, and players Noah Fant, Drew Lock, and Shelby Harris. Let's be real. The players were a wash. Fant, he's not terrible, but he's not really a career-type guy. And then the picks is where the real juicy details are. But really what happened after was the Broncos signed him to a 5-year, $245 million extension, which we are still paying the dead cap on. Ben, when you heard this trade announced, what were your thoughts?
Oh, I was celebrating. As you guys know, I was hating on Russell Wilson for about his last 2 years in Seattle because I would watch him play, and if you look at the box score, he looked amazing. But you'd watch him play, and you'd realize that there were games that were close games that he would come back and have a fourth quarter game-winning drive, and you're like, oh my gosh, amazing quarterback. But if you watch the first 3 quarters, it should have been a blowout. He misses open passes, he throws stupid turnovers, and very costly turnovers, as we all saw in that Super Bowl. It's just, that's what his career is to me, is he gets close and then he just throws it away. So I was happy to see him gone, and especially for 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and a 5th-round pick, plus 3 players. Drew Lock was an okay quarterback. If we had ran with him instead of Geno, I wouldn't have been mad, because obviously you're rebuilding at that point. So I was pretty excited when I heard the trade.
Yeah, I could probably speak for Vinny on this. We felt like we had something special when we got him. And Vinny, correct me if I'm wrong, but, caught up in the moment type of thing. And then once he came over, we started seeing the things that the Seahawks media was talking about, his corniness and just fake. That's, if how we were describing people with one word, fake would be the one for Russell Wilson, in my opinion. What do you have anything differing on that, Vinny?
That's right. So, just, close your eyes here for a second. Talk to our audience here as well. Picture yourself in the 1800s. You got fresh boots on, fresh spurs. You got 2 6-shooters on each side of your hip, and you pull them out and you're firing them into the air. That's what I was doing, when we got Russell Wilson. I was like, yeehaw! That faded very quickly. And all the fake stuff, that is what it is. But we saw it right away. The offense just sputtered immediately, and never, ever got going. And, at the time, it wasn't the only, veteran quarterback trade move that felt like it was a good fit. I think it might have been Stafford right before that, or right around that time, that made, the Rams Super Bowl champions. So it felt like that type of move at the time. But to your point, just overreaction, didn't see how it actually fit into the scheme, into the team. And, I think in my mind, he retired as soon as he got that contract. He stopped showing up. He stole money from the Steelers too, right? They made it to the playoffs or whatever, but you can just tell he just wasn't, he wasn't the guy he used to be. And good for him. I'm not hating on him. Get your cash. It's unfortunate it came at the expense of the Broncos, but here we are. We had to find another quarterback because of him rather than holding on to him. Some teams may have held on to that experiment a little bit longer, but that's one thing you got to say about the Broncos organization is they'll go after it. They'll make moves that most won't, and taking all that dead cap money was a move. A lot of teams, a la the Browns, isn't Deshaun Watson still hanging around? They made that move, and they're at where they're at now because of that trade. So it's a little bit of a trade-off there for me. We wouldn't be where we're at right now on a upward trajectory without him, but it sure did. It sure was a gut check.
Oh, definitely. I'm actually on the same page with you for the ownership because this all happened when we were in flux for ownership, and then we got the richest owners in the NFL, and they come in and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we'll write this off." So they probably have some back channels anyways, this tax write-off. But that being said, yeah, that trade, although it all happened, as you mentioned, and it was, kind of back in the dumpsters, just where we're at now, it finally provides some hope. And, that's what it means to be a fan right there. So, that being said, Ben or Vinny, at this point in time, do you guys have anything you want to get off your chests?
I think the NBA draft lottery needs to be changed, not just because the Jazz got the 5th pick, but because no worst overall team has gotten the first overall pick since they've made the changes. You had New Orleans getting the first pick. You had the Hawks getting the first pick recently. You had the Spurs getting it. You had Dallas just getting it. It seems like it doesn't go to teams that are actually bad. And statistically, it just doesn't make any sense that these teams aren't getting these picks. I mean, think about it. The only team that was the worst in the league that is in the top 4 picks right now is Charlotte, right? It's Charlotte at 4, and then the Jazz at 5, the Wizards at 6. This is insane. This isn't going to help the teams that need to build. So I think the draft lottery needs to be addressed, and I may only be saying this because the Jazz got screwed.
Yep, I was waiting for it. You know, the trick is, like, in the NBA, when a generational talent comes around, what would happen is the whole league would tank. Like, you know, Wemby, like, if it was truly the last team ranking, they would have put G Leaguers out there and the product would have suffered. So at least that's my take on why in the NBA specifically, when one player can impact a team so much, it makes sense to keep it as is.
Ben's just looking for some transparency. The numbers aren't adding up. My young nephew here is a math guru, genius, next level. And he's looking at those draft lottery odds and he's like, surely the Jazz are going to get a top 3 pick here based off statistics and numbers. But nope. And then you have a lot of these NBA heads coming out saying that the NBA's rigged.
I mean, that Luka trade was pretty suspicious. They didn't even shop him around. They just went straight to LA, one of the biggest markets in basketball, and said, hey, do you want our generational talent for Anthony Davis and a first-round pick?
Well, did you hear what Shaq said, too? When he was like, the commissioner came up, he said, do you like cold places or warm places?
Yep.
And then Orlando picked him. So, I mean, you never know. I'm sure there's some things behind the scenes which, you know, is above all of our pay grades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me, I'm going to stick with the NBA. And I mean, this isn't like a hot take. This is just annoying. I don't like the teams have an option to foul when they're up 3 within like the last minute, I'll say. You know, extending that game out with free throws, you know, just let the teams play it out. If they go for 3 to tie it, or, you know, they try and extend it with a 2 and then free throws. But for them to just cross half court, we got 4 fouls to give. We're going to foul you until you get you to the line, and then you can only, you know, make 2 when you're down 3. To me, that takes away just the excitement of the game. Takes away from the skill set that these players have to hit these long threes. You know, think of that Dame 3. Like, what if they just like fouled him? I don't know what they were down, but you know, seeing those big time shots late in the game is cool and exciting. And when they have these take fouls, you know, with a minute left, that really grinds my gears.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
Yeah, it definitely affects the product because, unfortunately, you know, the end part of the game is generally the most exciting. And instead of it being, you know, buzzer beaters and stuff like that, it's just prolonged by foul. And, yeah, no, I get what you mean there.
What was it, Game 4 of Timberwolves Thunder that ended that way? That annoyed me. I tuned in for the last, 5 minutes because I didn't realize it was on. And then I checked, and it was Shea at the free throw line. It was so annoying just seeing, because I wanted to see Ant try and take a 3 to win the game. I wanted to see it happen, but I knew the second that I saw him foul, it's just going to be a free throw competition, and you're not beating SGA in a free throw competition. That's why he's the MVP.
That's exactly where I was at. I watched that same game, and I get there's analytics behind it, and some people choose to do it, some people don't. But for me, in the pros, college, maybe, obviously high school, who cares? But in the pros, no take fouls under a minute left when you're down 3. And just play it out. Play the game out. They hit the shot, they go to overtime. They don't hit the shot, the game's over. Not this back and forth junk we saw in that game 4.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing that's going against everything that we were all thinking was that New York would move on so there was at least a single major market team, because we know the NBA likes their ratings. How many people do we think are going to watch this finals between Indiana and OKC? I know Indiana hasn't clinched it yet, but let's be real.
I think a decent number of people will still tune in just because, it's the NBA Finals. You don't not watch it. It really just depends on how close the games are. I think if it's like this Knicks-Pacers series where the games are fairly close, even though the Pacers have won most of them, I think it'll be entertaining enough for people to tune in. But you're definitely going to lose a lot of the people that are only there to watch the big names, especially because the two guys that are leading it would be Halliburton, shout out Halliburton, love him, and SGA. And they're both young, they're both great, and they're both stars, but they're not a Steph Curry or a LeBron James or a Luka. These players that have like this massive draw to them aren't going to be in the finals, so that'll be interesting to see how that impacts the ratings.
Yeah, as we speak, New York is up. Obviously, they'd have to win 3 in a row to get there. So never say never, right? Anything is possible. Shout out KG. For the NBA, it's no doubt. I mean, for every major sport, it's no doubt the major markets bring in the TV ratings. But what I've seen lately, and you'll see, is that they say the streaming numbers, right, bring it up as if it was one of the most watched in recent history. So I think once the numbers are published, you won't see this like big drop off like you'd expect. But if you're having a hard time drawing in somebody who like loves the NBA like myself, like I don't know how you're going to draw in casual fans to check out Oklahoma City versus Indiana, the Midwest Showdown.
Yeah,
it's like that's why I don't know. New York still got a shot. We'll see how it pans out, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people weren't happy with this finals.
Yeah, facts there. All right, Ben, your take on the Nuggets firing of the head coach, Michael Malone, and the GM, Calvin Booth. What were your thoughts when you heard that?
To troll my Nuggets fan friends. That was the first thing I did. I texted all the Nuggets fans I know and were like, haha. One of them was sending me so many crying emojis. He was in shambles. He was telling his girlfriend not to talk to him. It was really funny. Honestly, I do think it's a good move for you guys. There's two ways you can look at Jokic. You can look at him as this generational talent that's greater than everyone above him, head and shoulders, which I disagree with personally. I think he's amazing. He's like a top 3 player in the league, but I don't think he's enough by himself. Or you could look at it as the team around him is great, and either way, it wasn't getting the job done, as we've seen, and the GM really wasn't making any sort of moves to address it. He's just like, let's run it back and just hope that one of our young players somehow breaks out into a star and carries us to a title. The coach firing I was a little more surprised about. I thought Michael Malone did a great job, but then seeing him immediately switch up, saying that SGA deserved the MVP over Jokic the second that he got on the commentators, talking about it pregame, that shows to me that, maybe he isn't as good as we thought he is, because if he was truly like down for Jokic, he wouldn't just switch up to be petty. So I think that there's a lot of pettiness there, and if that's in your organization, it's good to get it out. David Adelman seems like he's doing an okay job. Took the Thunder to 7. So actually, there's no hate for me on the firing of the GM and the coach. I think it was a good move.
You've mentioned in the past, Jokic, he's not that great in terms of he's like very good right now, but not like maybe historically great. And I have troubles with that compared to some of these greats that are out there, like the supporting cast they had compared to Jokic. Like, for example, Michael Jordan, before he got Scottie Pippen, was 1-9 in the playoffs. That's pretty rough. And then we could move on to how Kobe Bryant was in the playoffs without Shaquille O'Neal or Paul Gasol. He was 9-10. Won 1 series, 2 series losses. And then we can move on to how Shaq was in the playoffs, which he actually is a little bit better because before Kobe and Wade, he also had Penny Hardaway and Horace Grant. And then in the middle there, he had Steve Nash, and I think he was on the Boston teams too. But he was 17-22. So it's really hard for me to take that take and not defend his greatness in terms of his second best player, Jamal Murray, is nowhere near any of those guys' supporting casts. And it's just the difference between a dynasty and a small market team putting, not garbage around him, but semi-inadequate compared to some of those greats. At least that's my take there.
See, I hear you. And to some extent, I agree. I don't think that Jamal Murray is quite the caliber of those guys you listed. But I think that Jamal Murray is so much better than you give him credit for, especially in the playoffs. I just looked it up really quick. Jokic's playoff record is 51-43. His playoff record without Jamal Murray is 5-10. He's really not great by himself, which, I mean, you can't expect a player to beat the entirety of another team by himself. But if he is so much better than everyone else, as I've heard these Nuggets fans go on and on about for the last 3-4 years, you could expect him to do a little bit, especially when he has other players around him. He's had Aaron Gordon, who's been playing really well. I don't even want to count MPJ as a player around him because he's terrible, man. But I think that it's unfair to give so much hate to Jamal Murray when, if you look at his playoff performances, he is kind of up there with those guys statistically speaking, especially in those big clutch moments. If you review most of the series against the Lakers, Jamal Murray dropped them off every time. Every time it was a close game, Jamal Murray hit a clutch shot, typically on Anthony Davis, to send the Lakers home. And I think, especially with how close you guys play all of your series, because you've had so many Game 7s in the past 3 to 5 years, I think you need someone like Jamal Murray to be clutch, and typically he shows up in the clutch. And I think that you're just discounting how good Jamal Murray is, and then attributing some of the greatness that Jamal Murray has to Jokic mistakenly.
But yeah, but it goes back to that inconsistency. So his bubble and chip years bump his stats pretty high. But what you're also missing is the 3 playoffs he missed. So when Jokic was playing with Facundo Campazzo and Austin Rivers trying to, win playoff series, that's a little bit difficult when most of your team were either on the couch or foreign leagues, not even able to play in the NBA. It's a little bit difficult to win playoff series, but that's my defense there. And by all means, Murray, like I said, it's pretty dang good, number 2, but he doesn't compare to those other ones listed. Vinny, you got anything to add to this?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know the dude's name, but he recently came out and said if Michael Jordan was able to pick, 2 or 3 teammates like LeBron has done, he would have had 10 rings or something like that. And that made for real debate because they were comparing, Jordan and LeBron and who is the GOAT. So when we take that kind of same concept of who are we comparing Jokic to? And David gets mad when I say Jokic, but I'm going to keep saying it.
At this point, you just got to lean into it.
Yeah, if we are comparing him to Shaq, and I'll just throw out Shaq because it's a not necessarily play style comparison, but same position. When you say Dwayne Wade in his prime, Murray, just say that and tell me how it feels. When you say Kobe Bean Bryant and Jamal Murray, just tell me how that feels. So I try and keep it relative to who we're trying to compare it to. Not only Jokic himself as a player and other centers, but also the Nuggets franchise. So when we look at, 2020 and beyond, there really hasn't been anybody who's went on a multiple championship run. Each one of these teams kind of one and done. I think it was Lakers, Bucks, Raptors, Nuggets, Celtics. If
I think it was the Warriors. The Raptors were the year before the Lakers.
Okay, so
Yeah.
2019 and beyond, we haven't had a repeat champion then. So add the Raptors, and then Warriors obviously had one several years ago where they were repeat champions. And really, the Warriors are in a category of their own. Period. Like you can't even talk about the Warriors when you're talking about any of these other teams. And each of these one and dones, right? There was nothing crazy special about these teams where they repeat again, and that's kind of where the Nuggets are at. They're right in that same mix. Raptors couldn't repeat; they lost their star. Lakers couldn't repeat. LeBron's got old. AD, like Ben said, every other day. AD. Celtics flamed out this year, right? Because they tried the modern NBA, even though they are not allowing fouls this year. I mean, each of these teams that we would compare them to, because they're not a multiple time champion yet, the level of talent that we have in comparison, just it's not on par with some of those other teams that I just mentioned. Even when you just look at the playoff stats and metrics. So I see both sides of the coin, but I try and keep it relative to who we're comparing him to and what those teams had that we compare him to.
Yeah, and I mean another note on the Nuggets is like, us being disgruntled about this playoff run and kind of worrying about the roster. I mean, this very well could have been one of the top 3 rosters the Nuggets have ever put on the court. The year we won the chip, it was by far and away the best roster I had seen them have. And the next year probably I'd say is almost equivalent with this year. So last year and this year's rosters are pretty close to the same. So that being said, I'm not discounting the roster in terms of that we've had better. As a small flyover city, we're putting together what we can because we're not a free agent destination. But that being said, Ben, I've got a little mini segment for you here. This is going to be 24 seconds on the clock. I'm going to give you 24 seconds, and the buzzer's going to go off at the end. What I want is whatever take you have on your chest that you need to get off. And that is starting in 3, 2, 1.
I think that Nikola Jokic and specifically Denver Nuggets fans are crazy because I've seen so many things talking about how good Jokic is, and he's great. But I saw a post by Bleacher Report saying that his 5-year run is better than Bird's 5-year run. Time.
Yeah, man, you started off stuttering. You got to come in hot with it. I don't know what to say. But comparing him to Bird, I appreciate you leaving it there because you can't say any more now. I'm sorry about that.
We'll just have to let the comments tell me if I'm crazy. Bird versus Jokic, all right? Who had a better 5-year run? I don't remember the years.
Hey! Don't you defend? Don't you? Your 24 seconds is up. All right, let's talk some more Nuggets. Specifically, let's dig into the playoff series against the Thunder. And what I want to hear from you, Vinny, is what we should have done differently. I know you were very upset about the zone, and probably more than anything, the disappearance of MPJ. But what other takes do you have on that?
Yeah, no, I'm going to stick with that. I mean, anybody who watches the NBA knows that zone defense in the NBA just does not work. The shooters are far too good. The offensive rebounds that happen as a result of zone defense and the accountability, right? When it's a zone defense, you kind of just look around like, oh yeah, we didn't shift the zone over on that one. Versus when you see somebody just getting attacked in a man-to-man, like you got to take that dude out of the game. You see that all over the NBA where they go after somebody and you have to switch that player out and find a different way to play defense. And I'm not talking about switching to a zone. And he did it for very, very long periods of time. And during his news conference where it felt like he made his moment, like this was his moment of his life versus like, oh yeah, this, like, I should be an NBA head coach. It felt like he needed to do like a Grammys award speech. But anyways,
Oh, it was hilarious.
He talked about how it conserved energy, right? Like, over a long course of the season, the zone defense, allows our players to conserve their energy. And I totally see what he meant, or his philosophy of trying to help Jokic preserve himself. And I think to a degree, the zone defense was successful in doing that. It allowed Jokic to not be on an island, trying to guard people one-on-one, trying to work through pick and rolls at the top of the key, because obviously he has, he just doesn't have the quickness, the lateral speed that a lot of other players do. But at what cost? At what cost? It was just constant, wide open shots. And it was a result of just a zone defense. And the offensive rebounds, just constantly, multiple shots, multiple possessions for a team that can score nearly at will, just giving them extra possessions. Why? Because that's what happens in zone defense. And the last piece, I know in the playoffs things slowed down, and I've talked about this. The game slows down significantly in the playoffs. But one aspect of the Nuggets is their ability to score in transition. And that zone, I don't think anybody talked about this, that zone truly changed our ability to get out and run. It just altered the mindset of the players, of how they operate. And the only transition points we would get would be off steals, which were few and far between, because their guards, could not, they would not lose the ball. So those are some pieces that really frustrated me in the series. And then the other piece that frustrated me is something just as basic as dribbling the ball. Like, for whatever reason, that they would be panicked from a little pressure defense from like Caruso, and all of a sudden, boom, turnover. Just, they didn't even have to overreact. And I mean, look at Aaron Gordon's hamstring injury. It happened because we couldn't even barely get the ball across half court without turning the ball over. We were up 10, 12, 14 points, and we couldn't get the ball past half court. He had to go try and save the day, dribble out, and hurts his hamstring. So it's like, I don't understand how really basic things like that hurt us so bad. And I get it. Everybody's saying OKC's defense is just, the greatest thing since the Pistons or something. So kudos to, OKC for working what the Nuggets gave them. And there's some things I definitely wanted to see better from the Nuggets. And then I'll save anything on the press conference later. So I don't know. I'm curious, Ben, as an outsider, what you caught from the games.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I see what you're saying about the zone, but I know we've talked about this before. I don't think the zone was truly the issue with you guys. I think the biggest issue was your guys' offense, and just the fact that you guys turned the ball over like crazy in that series. Especially, it sticks out in my mind because it was Game 7, but y'all had 22 turnovers in Game 7. And the crazy thing about the 22 turnovers is the amount of points that they get off of turnovers. It makes the game just fly out of your hands immediately, and there's nothing you can do against it to stop it. Because if you keep turning the ball over, it's typically going to be like an intercepted pass, or someone just getting pickpocketed at the top of the key, and that's 2 points for the other team right away, or maybe even 3 if they want to take a fast break 3. And I think that if you took away the turnovers and the fast break points, which obviously it's hard to play a game with 0 turnovers, but if you go from 22 down to like 7, I think that Game 7's actually close. I think that you've got a chance. But when you turn the ball over 22 times, it's just not going to go your way. You can't do that in a Game 7. And while I think the zone defense contributed partially to how well they were shooting, I think the bigger issue is the fact that you guys gave them offense by how badly you were playing offense and the turnovers that you guys had.
They started making the mid-court turnovers where it's kind of in transition, where they're having lazy passes, and that's kind of where I realized that it would break down. And Vinny, it's pretty funny because as I was watching that press conference, I knew that your gears were grinding because I heard him saying how he wanted to go to zone more, and I was like, oh yeah, Vinny is gonna love that.
It
But
just does not. I mean, historically and present day, it does not work in the NBA. I mean, even in college, there's just a handful of teams that run zone, and they do it like as a system religiously over decades. Not like, oh, we're going to switch to the zone in the middle of the playoffs. But I mean, they still brought him to 7. How much credit does Adelman get for bringing him to 7? I don't know. It's tough. Like, did Adelman really, do that much differently than what Malone did, bringing the Timberwolves to 7 last year? Because that Timberwolves team last year, that matchup seemed more difficult than this matchup, just because the size, the length, the height, athleticism that we were going against, and same result, right? Second round, game 7, except for that one was on our home floor. In the press conference, what also got me, and I know JJ Redick alluded to the same thing. He talked about conditioning, and I'm thinking to myself, you had your starters playing like 40 plus minutes every night.
yeah,
Like, how much better conditioning can you get to play playoff level basketball at that high a level for as long as they had to just to keep up? So, I mean, yes, obviously, sports and conditioning, huge. I was talking about smashing a bacon cheeseburger to start this thing. So, but to call out conditioning of all things during that press conference, I don't understand it.
it was a kind of like a softball down the middle. Came from a podcaster where he was trying to like kind of. I feel like he was trying to take a shot at Jamal Murray and Adelman bit, which is funny because Adelman is apparently him and Jamal Murray are really good buddies. But yeah, I think he teed him up and then Adelman just rocked it right over the fence. But the funniest thing to that news on that news conference where you were talking about like how it seems like he was like, thanking everyone for a lifelong award or something like that. Not only that, but it seemed as if everybody was like trying to prop him up as, oh, he's been around a lot of people that are successful. He's going to do well. And then like he started defending himself. He's like, yeah, I've been around a lot of people. And it was just, to me, it was just a bad take. I expected him to kind of step up and, when they do that original introduction, instead of being like, oh, I'd like to thank my mom, my daughter, my sister's brother, I wanted him to explain his vision and kind of take control of the room. And unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Like something along the lines of like, hey, this is a big moment for me, but I'm ticked off right now.
Right, I would love that.
I want to get us over that hump. Here's what I plan to do. Here's what I didn't have time to implement. Here's what I think is going to make a huge difference. Excited to see whatever the front office brings my way, but here's my plan. And he definitely got some softball questions from the media in that one, just some layups. But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, if you're Westbrook, you're going to miss those layups.
Oh,
hey, that is a fact. That is a fact. And you know what sucks most about the playoffs is like we could have won that series in 5-6, but they also could have shut us out 4-0. They missed so many open shots, like Vinny was mentioning in terms of their open shots. They just weren't hitting them. Like if let's say for example, for some reason that OKC team was the Golden State team that we once upon a time saw, we would have been ran out the court every game losing by 30. So I can't feel too disappointed in the results this year because unfortunately it wasn't the year.
Agreed. If OKC does go on to win it at this point in time, we gave them their toughest run. Just throwing it out there. No,
that is true.
I know there's no moral victories though in pro sports, but
right. So there's some news that KD, according to Brian Windhorst, 98% chance he leaves. I believe it was the Knicks or the Rockets, most likely destinations. Anybody got any thoughts on that?
Typical KD. Man,
Right.
KD, such a great player, but I think he's completely ruined his legacy with his team-hopping ways. The second that it gets tough, he just leaves, and then he ruins another team. The only team that he should just go back to the Warriors at this point, because that's the only thing that works for him.
Right. And the funny thing is they probably would win a championship, and then it'd get even worse for him. They'd be like, yeah, you definitely need Curry, dude.
Yep. If I'm any of those teams, unless it's dirt cheap, I'm not taking a swing at KD. Look at how much the Suns have suffered since he showed up. They had one chance back when the Nuggets beat them. If Chris Paul's hamstring didn't give out, it might have been a close series against the Nuggets. But since then, it just hasn't been good for them. And I think that they've given up way too much for KD, and then they gave up way too much to get Beal. And I think that it just shows that taking a swing on these old guys that are, not proven to be winners, that are just on the decline, is not a good idea. So if I'm the Rockets or I'm anyone who's not the Lakers, I'm not trying to trade for him. I think the Lakers make sense potentially just because LeBron's almost out of there, so his time frame matches up with KD. But if I'm the Rockets, I'm not sabotaging my young core to get KD to have, maybe 2 more seasons, and then he's just gone, because KD's what, like 38, 39?
Yeah, he's up there. Yeah, I mean, you got to wonder how many years he has left at this point.
He sure did look good in the Olympics.
Yeah, the thing that's messed up is, like, he's, for as good as he is offensively, he's not a scrub on defense. Block shots at the rim. He does rim protect, especially late in game. Like, when it's late in game, you'll see him protecting the rim. So if he goes to the right team, I think he could be pretty impactful. Do I think that's the Rockets? No. The Knicks, maybe, if they're talking about trading Cat, doing some type of small ball, maybe. But I definitely think he's got some gas left in the tank, but it's just got to be the right fit.
Ben, you're onto something with the young core, right? Like, Oklahoma City's proving that Houston should just, keep building, keep drafting. I think the Spurs would be cool to see. You have 2 just complete freaks. You have 6'11", Durant doing whatever he wants with the ball, whatever he wants offensively. And then you have potentially Wemby just absolutely controlling the defensive end.
Not to mention De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting team to watch. And, I don't know if the numbers work out or the picks work out, but seeing those 2 on each end of the floor, like, talk about scary. I don't know if that's championship scary, but that would be fun to watch.
Since we're talking about trading and everything, I saw something the other day from Clutch Points that was pretty awesome. It says Sam Presti is a magician. In 2007, the Seattle Supersonics traded Rashard Lewis to the Magic. In return, Presti just got a trade exception. Nothing too wild. But 18 years later, he turned that into SGA, Jalen Williams, a championship core, and a treasure trove of draft picks. So the 2007 trade exception was traded to the Suns for Kurt Thomas and 2 first-round picks. One of those picks became Serge Ibaka. In 2016, they traded Serge Ibaka for Victor Oladipo, Ersan Ilyasova, draft rights to Domantas Sabonis. In 2017, they traded Oladipo and Sabonis for Paul George. And then they traded Paul George for SGA, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks, 2 pick swaps. And then the picks from the PG-13 deal ended up becoming Jalen Williams, Carson Wallace, and others. I thought that was crazy, all from a trade exception 18 years ago.
Another little fun fact is that if the Pacers end up beating the Knicks and go to the finals, both teams will have inadvertently be built off the back of trading Paul George.
Yep, isn't that so hilarious? Paul George built 2 franchises, so the
Sixers.
The Sixers, they need to trade him away, and then that way they can finally have their franchise. The process will be over.
They need to trade the process. With that young core they have, Embiid and Paul George got to go.
I just couldn't see him moving Embiid.
I mean, this is really good news for the Utah Jazz. 18 years from now, the picks you got from Gobert and the picks you got from Spida, 18 years from now, it's going to, like, turn into some crazy pin board where you like trying to solve a crime. Look at all these different moves that were made, and they're going to end up in like this Western Conference semis, something like that.
I think he's being pretty generous with that too. All right. Until next time, keep that mile-high spirit and never forget, legends aren't born. They're drafted, suffer a neck injury, let go by their franchise, signed as a free agent, and for others, sometimes built one podcast ran at a time. Much love, Peyton Manning. Thanks for the good years. Denver Gridiron and Hoops is out of here. Catch us on the flip side.
In the mile-high city, where the lights shine bright, the Broncos fight hard in the cold, clear night. With every Hail Mary, our hopes take flight, and the Nuggets dribble dreams into the spotlight. 24 seconds, the clock's racing down. Every gridiron and hoops, we stand tall. With every dunk and three, we give it our all. In the city of champions, we heed the call. Together as one, we rise, never fall. With a quick crossover and a thunderous slam, the crowd's roaring wild, it's now or never, man. From the court to the field, we stake our claim. Together we'll rise, united in the game. Hit sticks collide, feel the energy surge. And play, we give it our all. In the city of champions, we heed the call. Together as one, we rise, never fall. So let's lace up tight, let the games begin. In Denver's heart, where we all win.